Hello, this is Helium Avid from the End of the World As You Know It.com. Today's news for tomorrow's views. Today we're going to be talking about a GridTie off-grid solar system and why you would want such a system. The positives of a GridTie intersystem are that they are heavily subsidized, so the cost of the ownership of these can be very inexpensive, and they're much less than a standalone system, which the government does not give you any money for. The engineering for such systems are easy because they're done as cookie cutters put out on houses, and really the owner doesn't have much to say about them. They're put up there, hooked up, and run right back into the grid. The negative of this is most grid intertie systems will not work when the grid is down, so they're not much use in a as a prep tool. So what do we look at to do to mitigate this? Well, a typical grid intertie system looks like this, where here's a 2.5 kilowatt system that I have on my house. This is what was proposed for my system, where there would be two strings of 8 solar panels, 185 watt solar panels in series, and making two strings. They run up around 400 volts, and they come down through a DC interconnect into a GridTie Sunny Boy, and we'll see pictures of all this later on, and then through an AC internet connecting into the grid power. And you actually, when you put the grid power onto the Intertie device, it waits for about 30 seconds till it's synced up with the AC power before it will actually start producing power. So you have to have both DC power and AC power before this grid intertie will turn on. Now, conversely, a typical off-grid system would look like this, where your charge controller only takes about 90 volts. So you would take two of these solar panels in series and then run these all in parallel. So you'd run the systems in parallel, come down through your charge controller, go down to your battery storage, run your AC inverter and then your battery maintainer off of that, and then take your off-grid power supply. So the solution that I used to take care of this was I brought all of the wires from the roof down to the area where the inverters were, and I used a switch box, and I used a system so that we could actually have the DC interconnect, and here's your regular GridTie over on this side, or I could flip the switches so that they would be connected in parallel, and now I could go to my charge controller, my battery backup, and like this. So what does it look like? Here's the system, the solar panels on the roof. There's 16 of the panels all hooked up. Here's the wires coming down the side of the roof, the wall from the roof, and then they go inside, and the panels are all beside here, and all the guts are behind this wall. And then we see one also a positive disconnect for people that are working on this panel to make sure they're disconnected from the system. So here's the system. Here's the AC intertie, grid intertie inverter. Here's the DC offline inverter. Here's the switch boxes. Here's the DC interconnect disconnect. Here's the AC disconnect. Here's the battery bank, the deep cycle, and then the deep cycle that I had before I had the money to buy the better deep cycle. And if we look at it, here's the Sunny Boy. I've got a wire here which I can actually use to do some very interesting things, which we'll talk about on a different slide. And we've got the charge controller here for the DC side going down into the outback inverter. Here's one of the switch boxes. And next slide, we've got our big batteries. And here's our smaller batteries. And then here's the outback inverter hooked up. And you notice, so basically that's what we have for an off-grid system, or a hybrid GridTie thing. We'd be glad to have you look over the slides and more talking about this at http://eotwalkie.com. That's endoftheworldasyouknowit.com. Thank you very much.